And with that, let's welcome in the smartest baseball person on the panel, not Adam the Bull. His name is Mike Ferrin of MLB Network, MLB Radio Network. What's up, Mike?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
I'm great. Just glad the season is off and running, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm a little ornery because the Yankees are 5-0. I don't like when the Yankees are doing well. I want the Yankees to lose every game they play, so I'm a little angry about that. But let's talk about it. I want your opinion on last night.
Wait a second.
Yeah,
Hang on a second. How often does this come up in therapy? Because I really feel like it needs to. That like you're more concerned about the Yankees losing than anything else in your life. Like, I think that's something that you probably need to like. We need to take a deep breath and push ourselves away from the standings and just be like, it doesn't matter.
But Mike, see, you're a normal, well-adjusted human being, so you know it doesn't matter. But I'm not.
He's a toxic, irascible, angry man.
Exactly. And when you grow up in New York and you do not root for New York teams, you get your balls busted quite a bit. And so for years, when I was young, really young, it was Met fans because you had the 86 Mets. And then eventually Yankee fans, and now Yankee fans are so obnoxious. Even now that they've only won one World Series in the last 23 years, they're still as obnoxious as ever. They think they should be anointed champs every year, so I hate them and I hate I don't really hate them like hate in a real way, but in a baseball sense, I hate them and I hate their fans. Is that unfair?
All right. Yeah, but it's fine.
Okay. Now, Triston McKenzie yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, Tanner Bibee gets a bad start. We don't care. No big deal. It's one game. But because McKenzie is coming off the injury and he never got the surgery and his velocity was down yesterday, we were a little concerned. How concerned are you or should we be about Triston McKenzie right now?
I would not be overly concerned. I talked to him in spring training. He felt good. I think the bigger thing is going to be watching, let's say, like 3 or 4 starts into the year to see where the velocity is. I mean, for the most part, it has a tendency to climb over the course of over a season, over the first part of the season. So I'm not really that worried about that. And, listen, some guys aren't going to have good starts right out of the gate, right? So I can see that being the case with McKenzie, who undoubtedly was chomping at the bit to get back out there in big league competition after dealing with all those injuries last year. So I wouldn't put too much stock in it yet, but if we get to the middle of April and the velocity's still down and he's getting knocked around, then I do think it's fair to start being concerned about it because of his injury history and really, quite frankly, because the Guardians are pretty thin rotation-wise behind the guys that they have out there now, with the exception of Gavin Williams, who should be coming back soon. That's where I start to get concerned because we have lauded the Guardians for their pitching depth for a long time, and right now they're not in a position where they have a lot of arms that are close to be able to help. At least it doesn't appear to be on paper. So that's kind of where my concern would be overall with them.
By the way, that reminded me of something funny. So Mike and his co-host Jim Duquette, the former big league GM, their show's called Power Alley on MLB Radio. If you're a baseball fan, it is the best baseball show out there. There's not a close second. And Jim was on, and I've known Mike for a while now. We've never actually met in person, but we've talked for a while. And Jim was on my podcast recently, and I mentioned this to him, and I forgot, and now I just remembered, so I'm glad you brought up your trip. Because during spring training, Mike and Jim go to all the different spring training sites. They interview the managers. They do great previews of all the teams. And I remember I was at the gym, believe it or not, walking around the track, and I was listening to the Guardians, your interview with Stephen Vogt. And when Stephen Vogt started listing the guys in the depth chart of the pitching staff after the starters, I started laughing out loud on the track. And then as soon as the interview ends, essentially you and Jim were then laughing out loud based on all...
Yeah, I had said at the outset I wasn't as concerned about the Guardians' pitching depth because they've been so good at developing pitching.
Right.
And sometimes it's just like, you feel like you've got a good feel for a team and then you see their lineup on opening day and you're like, ooh, that doesn't look right. You know what I mean? And so when you start to hear the depth names, you went, wait a second. Like, this is not what we've seen in the past. There's not Gavin Williams or Tanner Bibee ready to take the next step. Like the unfortunate injuries that Espino has had. That's a real. I mean, the guy's got such a special arm. Like, you'd just love to see him be healthy. But that's a guy that would have been in that next wave, and that next wave just isn't quite ready yet. And so it feels like they're going to have to count on these guys to give them, 140 plus, maybe 150 plus starts out of their top 5 guys, which is really difficult to do. It happens. It's not impossible. But, Bieber has missed time with injuries. McKenzie has missed time with injuries. Like, they're not guys that have a long track record of posting for 32 starts and 190 innings. And that's, I think, where some of the concern comes. Even though there's plenty of talent on the rotation, like, when they have those 5 guys out there, they should be really good.
Mike, I've tried to make the argument this spring that I don't think the AL Central is as bad is its reputation, and in the past it's been pretty lousy. But I'm high on the Tigers even before the start. I've been high on the Tigers all offseason. I thought Detroit is for real this year. I even think Kansas City's better improved. They made a couple rotation additions. I think the lineup's going to be a little bit better. Michael Garcia's already off to a power start that I think a lot of people didn't see coming. Where do you see the Central Division as a whole, and where do the Guardians slide in on it?
It's the weakest division in baseball still. I agree that the bottom of the division is better. I know the White Sox are, 0-4 now, but I think they've already shown that their pitching is more competitive and they're going to be a far better defensive team than they were a year ago. I don't know how many runs they're going to score, and especially if Eloy Jimenez is going to be out again, which, he's got an adductor strain now, which they've battled a ton of injuries with him. They're thin, but their floor should be higher than what it was last season. And I agree with that with Kansas City. I think Kansas City is a much better team than they were last year, but I don't know that they're a team that would contend in most spots. Detroit really didn't address their offense this winter, and I think that's a big issue for them, as Major League ready as all those starters were. And I'm a big Reese Olson guy. I was excited to see him pitch well last night. I think he's got a chance to be pretty good. And I think the Twins are a pretty solid team overall, although the injury bug has already bitten them, and they're going to be without Royce Lewis, who is, I think, in a lot of ways, the guy that makes them go from being a team that's going to have a chance to win the Central to being a team that can compete in a postseason series. He just does so many things to help lengthen out that lineup, and he seems to have that, rise to the occasion to him as well, kind of in the same manner that Carlos Correa does. So I think it's a flawed division, and I think because of that, Cleveland can sit there in the mix. But, there's concerns, I think, in the rotation depth. I think there's concerns in the bullpen depth. This Trevor Stephan injury is a pretty significant one for the Guardians. That guy has been really good, and that's not a guy that you really feel like you can afford to lose. So they're going to have to find a way to fill that. And, the offensive issues are no different than they have been. Like their best bet to being a better offensive team is, one is an Andres Jimenez bounce back, and 2, Bo Naylor taking the next step forward. But it still leaves them short in the outfield. I mean, it's one of the most incredible stats in baseball that the last time they had an outfielder hit 20 home runs in a season was Michael Brantley a decade ago. Like that, just like it's incredible, right? It's been 10 years since they've had an outfielder hit 20 home runs. And they don't really have those guys. I mean, Florial has the power, but I don't know if he's going to make enough consistent contact to do it. And they're playing a lot of Tyler Freeman in center, which, hey, great for him. Like, he won that job. And, I like Will Brennan, too. I think he can hit a little bit, but there's not enough impact in my mind in their lineup. And so that's kind of where the concerns are, is that it was very difficult to win with the lineup that they put out 2 years ago when they did win the division. It's a lot of the same names. They're going to need some of that power to bounce back from a guy like Jimenez, and then they're going to need to find some other help internally, because it just does not seem like they're going to go outside the organization to add what we really feel like they've needed for a long time, which is a corner-hitting outfielder who can bang.
Yep. Mike, you was just talking about the pitching, and obviously, Shane Bieber, it's a lot of talks about him being traded either at the deadline or after the season. But obviously his first start, he was lights out. If he continues to play like that and the pitching and the rotation isn't up to standard or where we're used to it being, do you think that they maybe potentially could extend him, even though that's something that they have never done?
I think it's like we're past the window of extension, because I think if Bieber pitches as well as he can, if he stays healthy the full season, if the velocity holds that he's added, which has been a big reason, I think, why he's in this position. I mean, even he brought it up unprovoked in spring training this year, that the velocity being better was something that he was excited about. I think he's going to be lined up for a payday that the Guardians aren't going to commit to a starting pitcher. And so I don't think that that's the most likely scenario. The most likely scenario, and unfortunately it's been wash, rinse, repeat in a lot of ways with this, is Bieber's been the subject of trade discussions for a couple of years. The Guardians should have a pretty good idea of where the market sits for him or teams that could be interested. If he pitches the peak of performance, they probably have an idea of what the best package they can get is, and they move him at the deadline. And there's even that chance that they do that if they're in contention, because they are, like, for all of the flaws, and there certainly are flaws, one thing you can say about this front office is that they have not willingly punted a season, and they want to be able to be in a position where the team is competitive year in and year out. And I do think that's an admirable quality, because I don't think every organization has done that. But I'm really curious to see how that plays out, because I mean, there is a case to be made to just say, hey, listen, if we're in the mix, we hold on to Bieber regardless. We'll take the draft pick at the end of the year, and it gives us the best chance to win now. But I think they're always trying to look 2 or 3 years down the road. Like, you're planning for the present and the future constantly in Cleveland, which is a smart way to go about it. It's just with the resources that they have, there's not going to be big extensions for guys. And I don't really view them as being a team that's going to extend a starting pitcher for a market value deal anyway, because I think they see the value in, like, you're much more likely to get that for a position player, you know, like what you had with Jose Ramirez or what you had with Andres Jimenez, than I think you are to get a pitcher, unless they do it when they're in their pre-arbitration years.
Mike, I'll to go a step further than that. I don't believe the Guardians under this ownership will ever extend a starting pitcher again. Quite honestly, they tried with Clevenger. He rejected the deal. That worked out in the Indians at the time in their favor. They tried with Bieber. He rejected. They were putting literally the final dots on the I's and the crossing of the T's with McKenzie last spring. He was about to sign an extension, and then the tear shows up. All that gets tabled. He's never going to see an extension from them again. Gavin Williams is a Boris client. He's not being extended. Tanner Bibee already got an extra year of service time because he finished second in the year. Mm-hmm. If they don't extend him now, they're not going to extend him. Show me the next starting pitcher that the Cleveland Guardians are going to extend on a pre-arbitration deal. I think they go into this now saying, we have 5 years with these guys, and then we're going to trade him with 2 years of control left. Shane would have been traded last year had he not gotten hurt. I think this is just the approach that they have. We're going to draft these guys. We're going to develop them. We have 5 years with them, and then we move on and we find the next batch.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the reason is that they don't have, the front office is not given the resources to run a payroll that's high enough to take risks on starting pitchers. And pitching is the most risky commodity in baseball, right? It's the most valuable in a lot of ways, right? Because you need to have good pitching in order to win. But there is also the biggest risk for players just, I mean, not performing, not being available for the length of a contract. It is
Everybody
really
has
difficult
Tommy John now,
to do it.
and they're out a year and a half. Everybody has Tommy John.
Yeah.
You build that in, you bake that into the career.
And even if they don't, there's any number of other things. I mean, just by risk of throwing hard, you're at greater risk for injury, whether it's Tommy John or a flexor tendon or a shoulder issue or any number of different things. I mean, heck, even like the guys that you mentioned there that they talked about extensions with, you're right, they backed off the McKenzie one because he was hurt, right? Bieber had injuries, right? Like it's like a Bieber extension may not look, especially coming off the year he had last year, may not look very good right now. I think it's much safer to extend position players than it is pitchers, as much as you may love quality pitching at the front of a rotation. But like this goes back years, right? They didn't do it with Sabathia. They traded Cliff Lee. Like as those guys got close to free agency, they replenished their farm system by moving him. But the other thing that they have done for the most part has been competitive as a result of it. And so the strategy has largely worked, even though I can only imagine how frustrating it is for Guardians fans because it's like, don't get attached to anybody.
Mike, if the Rockies and A's consolidated into one team, would it still be the worst in baseball?
Oh, boy, that's a really good question. I think if you put the two teams together, they might be better than the White Sox.
Okay, so they might be 20.
They might be 28,
whatever it is.
Something like that. They're not good. Like they're really like, and for everybody is gonna just mark this right now. Everybody is going to pick on Colorado's pitching this year, and that's not going to be fair to them because their numbers are always going to look lousy because they pitch at Coors Field. Yeah. They actually have a couple of decent pitchers, right? Kyle Freeland's not bad, actually. His numbers are going to look terrible because he pitches at Coors. That is a bad offensive team. I mean, they're just not good. And they have played really poor defense to this point. So have the A's. But the Rockies, like I went and saw the Rockies play on Saturday night, and like I knew they weren't going to be good, and I walked out of it going, "Ooh, this is going to be a tough season." And there's just not like outside of Tovar, their shortstop and Nolan Jones, they have very few guaranteed building blocks. Like Brenton Doyle is a great story, right? He went to Shepherd University, the D2 in West Virginia, and he won the Gold Glove last year, but he has not hit at all at the big league level. And I'm not sure that he will unless he cuts down to strikeout. And it looked like he had for the first 3 weeks of spring, and then all of a sudden the swing and miss crept back into the game as he started facing more and more big league pitchers later in the game. And I just think that there's like the road back to contention for the Rockies, I think, is actually longer than it is for the A's right now.
Oh, yeah. That division is. Mike, last thing, folks who don't know, not only is Mike a great Major League and minor league baseball expert, he also knows as much about college baseball as anybody I know. So the Guardians have the first pick in the draft, Mike. We got about 90 seconds left. I know it's early because the college season is, just in its early stages, but where are you leaning towards the first pick of the draft for the Guardians?
I would give you two names that are worth considering right now. Charlie Condon, who is at Georgia, who leads the nation in home runs and is hitting over 500. This is a guy who was a redshirt freshman a year ago, didn't take a single at-bat the first year he was on campus. He was a preferred walk-on. And Condon is having an unbelievable year. Really good athlete, 6'6". He's played some third base and played it pretty well. Real right-handed power. I would say Condon is near the top of the list. I think twice as many walks as strikeouts. It's more homers than strikeouts, and it's like 18-13 right now, something like that. The other name I would consider is probably the more famous one, and that's Jack Caglione, who's the first baseman at the University of Florida. He's also their Sunday starter, so he's a left-handed pitcher that throws 100 miles an hour and also has arguably the biggest raw power in college baseball. He has improved his approach significantly at the plate. The walk totals are still pretty high, but he does not give up any contact. He is a legitimate two-way player. His nickname is Jack Tani, which is pretty good. But he is a legit force. Those are the two guys that I would put at the top of the list right now. And then you can get into like some of the pitchers, Chase Burns at Wake Forest, Hagen Smith at Arkansas. But really, those two bats, I think, are the top two guys right now in this draft.
Like it. Both sound very appealing. Mike, you're the best. Thanks for joining us as always. We appreciate it.